All right, welcome to a conversation with Trevor Waurechen. This is Homer Watson House and Gallery. I am your host, Ralph Wall, and we're just having casual chat here with the artist himself. So let's just start by you telling the world who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, I'm Trevor Waurechen. I'm an artist. I work in far too many different media, but right now most of my work is based around light-based installation work, and particularly I've got the works in the main gallery at Homer Watson right now, which are all basically like neon signs. And I've also got work in the outside at Homer Watson as well. A piece called Alpha, which is a series of light boxes shaped like letters of the alphabet. And that's best viewable at night when you can really see the difference between the colors of the lights. But it's accessible any time of day right now, even during our lockdown.
Yeah, true enough. True enough. So, what is your art background, and how did you get into more contemporary art?
Well, I've always been exposed to art. My dad was an artist. He did a lot of work locally here in KW, and so art's something that's always been part of my life. I was a student at OCAD. I went through OCAD for illustration actually, and started out doing commercial work, and it just never really satisfied that creative impulse to be doing commissioned work that I was hired to with very specific briefs. So I'd always kind of done comics and more fine art kind of printmaking and painting on the side of that. And eventually that stuff just sort of became more important to me in my creative life. So that sort of took dominance over the commercial work, which I've sort of stopped doing in the last 5 years or so. And really just kind of the more I work in kind of fine art modes, the more I find myself leaning towards contemporary methods, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just like I really like the idea of kind of exploring the line between what's art and what's not. There's particularly with the work that's at Homer Watson right now. I had a conversation with a friend recently about how to an artist, what I'm doing is art, but to someone who's not necessarily particularly savvy in contemporary work, what I'm doing looks like sign making. And I really like kind of playing along that line. I like straddling that edge and just sort of seeing like how far you can push that. And that's become increasingly important in the work I do, and has led me to a lot of media explorations, like getting into the light-based work that I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I mean, obviously, I know you very well. I've seen a lot of your work, and you've done a lot of light installations and light pieces. What is it about the light that draws you to it?
Uh, well, I maybe even just that, like in your phrasing, like there's where your eye is drawn to light, right? Mm-hmm. So that's an appealing thing right there. I've always, this may be a bit of an abstract explanation, but I've always been drawn to kind of accidents of the medium, mm-hmm. right? Like I love when like just visual things happen as a result of your process rather than as a result of your planning. And it's hard to articulate how that relates to light, but there's always a bit of that in any kind of work that you do. And I find, particularly because like I don't have a background in electronics or anything like that, and I'm kind of learning as I go with a lot of these light pieces. I find that, excuse me, a lot of the sort of discoveries I make doing it are the things that make it interesting to me, like just kind of figuring out how to wire it, how to program controllers for it and stuff. I sort of discover new things that I can do with the lights, and so I sort of stumbled on working with light by accident, and have just kind of continued down that path. And there's a lot that keeps pulling me along that path. There's a lot that is really like I am far from having exhausted the possibilities of working with light. So it sort of keeps pulling me in that direction. It's sort of, maybe I can explain by contrast a little bit too, because it's coming on 20 years since I finished art school, and in most of that time, printmaking has been a big part of my practice. I've always loved doing block print work. It's been probably 3 or 4 years since the last time I even cut a block. And that I feel like I sort of reached a point with that where I had done everything I can think to do with it. Like there's definitely more images I could be making, more ideas that I see in that medium. But having explored so many different ways of working within that medium, it just felt like I was kind of, I'd tried it all and was ready to try something new. That's always an important part of my practice, is that I learn with everything I do. If I'm not learning from the process of creating this particular work, then it's probably not the work I should be doing.
Right. Yeah, no, I can totally relate, because as an artist myself, my most successful pieces have been accidents in the process, right? So when I'm teaching, I always say the journey is almost more important than the destination. How you got there is so important than just doing it right the first time, because you'll learn more making mistakes, right?
Yeah, and teaching is a good reminder of that. In my teaching, I love, one of the most repeated things I say to my students is try it and see.
Yeah.
Screw it up, you'll learn something more.
Yeah.
It's, it should always be an exploration. And yeah, you learn so much more from doing it wrong than from getting it right the first time.
Oh yeah, for sure. So you were talking about your other works, and now that you're transitioning more into light-based stuff. So I've noticed a couple of your pieces are almost fusion. So you've done light on top of your existing artwork, like your comic panels and the swords and whatnot. So do you see that as an evolution of your older work, like adding?
As an evolution of my older work and an evolution of my newer work?
Yeah, fair enough.
That is definitely sort of, speaking of this series in the gallery, that's definitely kind of the direction I see this work going in. I've sort of come at it from two sides, where I've been painting for my whole life or whatever, right? And working with these lights lately, and just those two paths came together, and so now that's a new direction to take, and to see how far I can go with that, combining those elements. It just sort of seemed like the logical conclusion in a way, I guess.
Cool. You use a lot of text and symbols in your work. Is there anything that you want to speak on? Like why do you do that? Is it because you want people to, you know what, I'm gonna let you decide. You tell me what it means to you. Why are you choosing to use all these text and symbols?
Well, there's it. I mean, visual language is such an interesting thing, right? Like there's so much. There are so many things that we know and understand and read from visuals, right? And so the idea of kind of simplifying forms, like I really like um, the language of signs, right? Like posters, street signs, like it's very deliberate that these pieces are meant to look like neon signs. There's a simplicity to that. I love the reduction of detail, but there's still that clarity of information. You know, like how little can we say about a thing and still communicate what it is?
Mm-hmm.
That's always been sort of interesting to me, to see what we can take away visually and still understand, and so incorporating those things, those symbols or like text and things like that, is, you know, kind of seeing how many visual languages can be combined and still maintain that clarity too. It's maybe sounds like sort of the opposite approach, the reduction and then sort of adding from different places, but it's still, I mean, it's communication either way, and the ways we communicate are what makes art interesting to me, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So some of your in your objects of desire exhibition in the gallery, some of your symbols from I'm putting on a Mennonite slip here, from a conservative point of view, can be a little bit more construed a little more racy. And I've enjoyed actually watching people's reactions to it, because they're not at all what I expect. Like I've never had my oh my experience, except for one, and that was from a 5-year-old girl when her mom explained to me what one of the pieces was, or explained to her. So, what is your message when when you put up something that is a little more edgy like that?
Well, it's I like the idea of kind of removing that idea of taboo.
Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, like conceptually, this show, this series started out as kind of visual interpretations of the 7 deadly sins, was sort of my jumping off point for that. So, you know, including lust and all the others. It was like,
yeah,
sort of obvious to do that. So that concept became a bit more abstracted as I went on, but that was still sort of foundational in where most of these images came from. And there's like I subscribe to the theory that art is meant to make people a little bit uncomfortable. I can't remember who said this, but something like art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
And you know, like I really like that way of thinking. One of my greatest moments of satisfaction as an artist has come doing installation work at events, and there's crowds of people, and I can just lose myself in the crowd. People don't necessarily know that I'm the artist of this piece here, and I can just watch their reactions. And I love seeing that full gamut of reaction, from like the satisfied appreciation to the like what the hell is this kind of things that people make. And I love it. I mean, I take absolutely no offense to people having that reaction. In fact, like it's not so much for me, it's not about what reaction people have, it's that people have a reaction. And I've never been 100% comfortable with the gallery presentation of artwork. So it's sort of interesting that we're in our second lockdown now during my show of these works in the gallery. Right. That like that's kind of taken away people's opportunity to see it in this gallery context. But galleries are such a kind of it's a very controlled space in which to see art. There's sort of the like proper gallery way of looking at art, right? You know, like you stand 6 feet back and you look at it for 70 seconds or so, and then you move on to the next one, right? And that's how everyone looks at art. It's I probably do more people watching than art watching when I go to like a special exhibit at the AGO, say.
Right.
Because everyone is doing that exact same thing.
Yeah.
And they're not responding to the art. They're responding to the context.
Yeah.
And I like art being taken out of its typical art context, because then there's an opportunity for people to react. And that's what's important to me as an artist, is the reaction that people have. I don't care if you love it or you hate it.
Right.
You're investing the time to have a response to it.
Yep.
You're investing the time, you're investing the thought, and you're investing the emotion. And that's what I want. I suppose really that's why I put some taboo type images into this show, is because I want the response.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to piss people off, but I want a reaction to it. I want people to even to, you know, judge it, right? Like I want them to decide if that counts as art or not, or it if you have a problem with it, if you love it, whatever, you're reacting. You're not just looking or you're not just seeing and moving on. You're actually looking and thinking and feeling and responding. Right. And those are important elements that I feel like have gotten lost in our kind of typical contextualization and resultant commodification of what art is these days. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like working in several galleries now, you can always tell someone who appreciates art, because you get one of two people. You get the person who walks in the door, sticks their head in and goes, "Oh yeah, cool," and then walks out. And then you get the other person who will actually go and look. And if they start leaning into something, whatever the reaction is, good, bad, whatever, as soon as they lean in, you got them, right? Now they're invested, and that's what you want, right? Whatever the actual your interpretation that they have is. So yeah, it's people watching is always fun.
Yeah.
So I mean, I already know the answer to this one, because I was going to ask you, which do you prefer, gallery exhibition or public installation? But I think it's clearly obvious that you know, the people watching is always fun to do.
Yeah, it like the installation just provides so much more opportunity for that.
Yeah. Now, can you speak on what pieces in the current show of Object of Desire are your favorite and why? And also, what were some of the challenges you had in putting this stuff up?
Well, most of my challenges were shortcomings in my my knowledge and ability with the medium. So working with these lights is how I've learned how to work with these lights. So there's every piece of light that you see in the works has to be wired together, and I've never done any wiring or soldering or electronic programming or anything before doing these light works. There's other works that I've done that have involved these things, but it's all been in the last couple of years, and I've learned by doing. So there were a lot of pieces. This happened a few times with these pieces where I had soldered it all together, wired it, it was done, and then it didn't work, or this part of it didn't work. And so I'd have to take it apart, redo that connection, or replace lights inside those tubes to make it work. These are all LED lights. It's not actually neon. So the LEDs are sort of, I think there's like 3 every inch or so. And so every once in a while there'd be a light or a section of a few lights that weren't working, and I'd have to cut these tubes open and replace that. And that took more soldering skill than I had, and had to kind of develop that as I go. So generally that was sort of my biggest challenge with them, was keeping a handle on the electronics. As for my favorite pieces, was that what you asked too? It's interestingly, because this is sort of the biggest stretch of the concept of the show. There's a piece that's a pineapple, which is possibly my favorite, definitely one of my favorites in the show. It doesn't necessarily fit the theme, but it sort of worked visually with the other pieces. And it, as far as just kind of purely aesthetically working with the lights, I think worked out the best. It was also the most labor intensive as far as wiring, because there are so many different segments to it that I had to wire together. And some of the wires are on top of the board. If you look closely, you can see them, and some of them are put through the board and back out to connect to others. And there's also, again, kind of speaking about how things are viewed in a gallery context, there's that one has the most obvious rough marks still showing. You can see lots of my pencil lines on the canvas there, and that's just like in viewing other artworks. There was a Picasso show at the AGO, I want to say probably about 7 or 8 years ago now, that really sticks in my mind for having seen the works there, that I keep kind of coming back to this thought when I'm creating lately. Again, people were standing the polite 6 feet back and just looking for the right amount of time, kind of thing. And I was actually going through this show with my brother, who's also a painter, and he and I were getting really close. We were right up there and looking at like the brush strokes. That's one of my favorite things about looking at actual paintings, is getting close enough to see the brush strokes, just like to get a sense of how that paint was applied and stuff. And it really struck me in that show particularly, and I'd seen it before and I've seen it since in other works, but that you can see the pencil lines, you can see the raw canvas in between the strokes, things like that, like not being perfect about your work, and showing your process as a part of the finished product too, is really important to me, and increasingly important the more art I create. And so like having that element as a part of it, letting those steps show through in a way, is really important to me. And I feel like it felt successful to me anyway, in how I had done that in that piece, showing the pencil lines. There's pencil lines in there to mark where I was going to put lights, and then decided that would be too much, and I didn't. But I left those lines in there, partly because it works with the image, and partly because it's exposing the process. And I really like that. I really like that's what I want to see when I look at other people's work. Is I want to see how they did it.
Right.
And so the more I can show that without it looking kind of amateurish or unfinished or anything, which is probably more of a fear in my head than anything, because I've just kind of given the example of Picasso, and there's others too that had that. It comes from an impulsive way of working, I guess, working very like quickly and very just like focused on the work, just like you need to get this out kind of thing. And you're if you get into that kind of flow state where you're just like spilling it onto the surface so quickly that you can't be concerned about whether this last step of the piece still shows.
Yeah.
And then in fact, when you see the whole thing, it kind of works to have that. So I really like that. That was sort of that was my approach to most of the painted pieces too in this series, was to be as loose as possible with the paint, to not be perfect about it, not make, I don't want to say not make finished paintings, but I tend to do a lot of underpainting when I paint, but then I overpaint the layers on top, and you don't see the underpainting at all. So that was a goal with most of the paintings in this series too, was that like if I'm gonna paint, green here as an underlayer, and then there's going to be purple on top, some of that green still has to show through the purple, or why did I waste that time doing the green? And if you look at it in those terms, I've wasted a lot of time with other paintings I've done, because I will often, just sort of sticking with that kind of example, like that green will help me in finding the right purple that I know that is going to be purple there. But I need that green first, and then I'll end up overpainting it and you don't see that there was green there at all. It helped me in my process, but it doesn't hold any meaning then to the finished work. So letting that step be a part of it is really important, I think.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to what you were saying. Like the process is equally important. Like the journey, how you got there.
Yeah.
You might cover up everything you did, but doing what you did got you to where you were.
Yeah. I really like there's Andy Warhol was always big on the idea of process and how much process shows. And I don't think you can really see it in his work as much as I feel like, from my understanding, it was part of his philosophy. But I always think of like his advice to the Velvet Underground when they were working with him and through the factory, that he would tell them, go up on stage and just practice. Don't play songs, work through the stuff. Don't practice hidden away, practice on stage in front of an audience. And that's what I would love all my work to feel like, is to have that just exposed process, right?
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so I mean, I also have like several favorites in the show, but Pineapple's definitely in the top 3. And because I mean, the colors, the lines, the shape, the pattern, which really to me reflects back on your block printing. Like you have some block prints that they would go well together with your Pineapple, and you can definitely see your older work showing through in your new work.
Cool, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That is actually kind of, again, part of what led me on this journey in this direction with my work is again, like I've always worked in so many different media at the same time. And when I was doing commercial work, that was always a frustration I would encounter with art directors. I have had a few arguments about this with people who would see my portfolio and look at my work and say, well, you're doing too many different things. I don't see, I don't know what I can expect from you if I hire you. You need to be consistent. You need to stick with one style and just always do that. And I've never liked that approach. And it's always seemed very closed-minded to me because to my thinking, I am working in one style. I'm just working in different media to execute that style. Mm-hmm. And so like, that's great. I take that as a pretty big compliment to hear you say that you can see the connection with my block print work, because I often wonder how clear that is to people viewing my work. But it's definitely, to me, it is all connected, and I'm glad to hear that others can see that too.
Yeah, cool. Well, like your block printing is well, not colorful because it's of the nature of block printing in general. And this work is super bright and colorful. Now, you were paired with Patty Agapi's abstract show Memento in the other rooms. How does that feel? Like, do you like to know ahead of time who you're being paired with, or do you just like to see how they work together when you do a group show with another artist? Because they do complement each other very well.
Yeah, they do. And that was actually that you guys at the gallery deserve the credit for that, I think. Tabitha had told me that my show would be paired with this really bright, colorful one that she thought would work really well. And I hadn't seen the other work until they were both, it was all up in the gallery. And it does complement really well. And I like that. I like the sort of the spontaneous connection of that, you know, like, I don't know that she was aware of my work and I wasn't aware of her work, but together they do really fit. I would actually be really interested to see how they could be combined together into the same space instead of being in those two separate rooms even. Yeah. Because I think there are lots of interesting spontaneous connections that can happen that way. And, you know, like a good example of that in my work to go along with that is I had just recently done a show. This must have gone up. It was sometime in January, so it was just before we had hung this work at Homer Watson. I had taken 3 pieces from this series that I didn't end up putting in the show and hanging them in the Arts Pay window gallery in Uptown Waterloo, mm-hmm. Along with some paintings by Anne Filiatro. And there was just an opportunity to fill that window for a couple of weeks, and we agreed to do it together. And it was just like, I have these things that I want to put up, and she said, I have these things that I want to put up. And so we tried it. We talked about a bunch of different configurations, and it really worked. There was a real nice complement between those works, and none of them were created with a mind towards that. It's just finding these images that fit together without being the same, right? Like it's sort of the absence of like awareness of that context in the creation of the work is almost in a way what made them work together.
Right. Yeah, cool. So in contrast to that, you created your outdoor exhibition Alpha. You did it as a response to the arena speaker installation. So how did that how did the speaker? I mean, I already know the answer because I spoke to you at length about it. But how did Arena inspire Alpha? Yeah. So speak on like because in your artist statement you said that Alpha was a response to Arena in a different art language. So speak on that a little bit.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I sort of explained that in my artist statement about Alpha, where like Arena was interesting to me because it it's so visually spectacular, right? Like the way these speakers are all fit together is like really interesting and engaging and fascinating to me. But it from the descriptions I've read of Benoit's about like what that piece was about, he describes it as like an auditory piece. He doesn't really address the visual, as far as I recall, and that I mean that struck me as very interesting because it's I think it's so visually stunning. So I wanted to kind of play off of that and sort of reverse that, right? Because like even when we're talking about text, language is still sort of auditory in my mind, I guess. And so I wanted a visual representation of sound in the same way that he had kind of created a I don't know, an auditory representation of visual. I don't know. I really liked his kind of play on like visual and sound with that, and I don't really work in sound at all, so it was a different approach to begin with on how I would kind of respond to that piece. But so because I was commissioned to create this work to accompany Arena, responding to it seemed like quite a natural thing. And it was, I actually can't remember now if I had the idea for Alpha before or after being asked to commission, because I do often have kind of ideas for works kind of in my back pocket just until the opportunity comes up.
Right.
But that worked as a good opportunity for that, but it may have also been that idea came out of responding to Arena. So there was I wanted something similar but different, I suppose. I feel like I'm dancing around answering your question instead of.
No worries. No, I mean, I kind of see the two mirroring each other in a lot of ways. Where Arena is this big, massive wall of speakers. Visually, it's like, wow, what is that? I need to come closer to see it, right? And then you can interact with it with sound to bounce back at you.
Yeah.
But your work has all these letters together, but they're all jumbled. Each phrase is lit up in different colors. But because of this language, I myself included, I see other people sounding it out. So we are actually creating sound from your letters, trying to figure out what the words are. It's kind of like connect the dots. We connect this letter to that letter to that letter, and okay, what words can I make out of this? What message can I see? So I will sound it out. I will create sound from this non-audio art piece, and I'm going to look at this thing that should be all about sound. Like they're very like reflective of each other. I love it. I think it's a great pairing.
Great. Yeah, thanks. There's again, there's there's a response to it, right? Like that's uh, that's sort of that was kind of one of the things that was important in my mind in creating Alpha, was that it have sort of a uh, that time investment, right? You can't just look at it and move on. You need to
Right.
actually spend time looking at it,
Mhm.
and maybe those messages in it don't mean anything to you, or don't resonate, or feel like you've wasted that time and energy. But it whether you feel it's a waste or not, you gave it that time and you gave it
Mhm.
that energy.
Yeah.
And so like that's that's important, I think. Like you there's investment there, and that's the thing that I was saying before. I feel like there isn't often investment in artwork when you see it in a gallery. So taking it out of the context of a gallery, even though it's still right beside a gallery, um, that's enough to change that context. You don't look at it in the same way, and you it is meant to kind of illuminate that path to arena, and you need to travel that path at least once, maybe a couple of times, to get the messages, right?
Right.
So in order to engage with the piece as intended, and to really like see it and get it,
Mhm.
um, you need to take that time. You need to invest on some level, and I feel like art doesn't often enough ask for that investment. And I think arena does that too. Arena asks for that investment, in that, like, you can Bluetooth to it, and play your own music through it. But you need that sort of understanding to be able to do it. And whether that's like explained in a sign, or it just comes from visual cues in the piece, you're investing in it. You're not just looking at it and moving on. uh,
Mhm.
yeah, so I like, I've already said I like that approach to art making, and it feels really fortunate that I've got this piece paired with another piece that is kind of making that same demand, or holding that same expectation of its
Mhm.
audience.
Yeah. So much like your block printing, I'm sensing a pattern in your exhibitions, because again, like here you have Alpha on the path to arena installation. So it's all about getting there, the journey, like the process. Okay, in order to get to that, I have to go through this first, right? And then all it you have a repeating um, motif. It's always, how did I get there, right? Showing the process in your work, uh, getting to the work that I'm paired with. You have to get there through me first, right? Like, so you're always part of the journey, and then also the investing yourself to interpret what your work means. It's about, okay, how did he get there? Now I have to figure out how he got there. So I have to look at your work, and I have to go through that same journey mentally. Oh, okay, I know what he's doing here, right? So I'm investing. I'm always journeying, I guess, for lack of a better word. So yeah, I like it. That's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah.
So uh, just to wrap up here, what do you want the audiences? I mean, I think it's kind of self-explanatory with what you said, but what do you want the audience to take away from both of these shows?
Well, to take away the works in their mind, um, to remember the piece, right? Like, to remember any of the pieces. Just, there's that's that's kind of ultimately the payoff of that investment, right? Is that it's not just a frivolous experience. It's something that does stay with you then, because you've invested that time or that emotion or that thought along with the work, you don't just walk away from it. You still carry it with you in a way, and that's I don't think you can say that about a lot of work that's in galleries or museums. I've been to the Louvre. I don't remember what I saw in the Louvre other than the Mona Lisa. And the reason I remember the Mona Lisa is because of the idiot throngs of people just piling in around it, and everyone's trying to get their camera in there and take a picture. And it was the spectacle, not the art, that stood in my mind. So I'd, in a perfect world, the art would be that spectacle. And that's the sort of thing that you remember afterwards. So that's my hope, is that I'm creating work that is remembered, not just passed by as kind of lumped in as a part of this experience, right? The art is the experience itself.
Right. Cool. So if people want to get to know more about you or get in contact with you to see your work, buy your work, have your work shown somewhere, how do they do that?
Yeah, well, my website is in the process of improving, and that's at waurechen.com. There's again, like the slow transition throughout my career from commercial work to more fine art, to more contemporary fine art, has my web presence hasn't always kept up with that, so I'm working on that. Also, my Instagram is where I'm most active online. And again, that's Waurechen. You can see a lot of process stuff in my Instagram. I try to show the journey of creating the work as much as showing the work itself on there. So those are the best ways of kind of keeping up on what I'm doing. I think all my contact info is attached to both of those things.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll put links on the down below so people can find you. So before we go, is there anything upcoming, any secret projects you're working on that you want to tease us with?
No, I got nothing going on thanks to this pandemic.
Yeah.
This work has actually kind of inspired me to a lot of things that I sort of thought I wouldn't do, and a lot of things that I thought I was done with. So there are definitely ideas brewing, but kind of where they'll show up, I don't know yet. But this is again, like I said, because I don't feel like I've exhausted the possibilities of working with light. There's a lot more light works that I have in mind to do, and like I said, the combination of paint and light feels like sort of a natural direction to move in, and definitely in the process of creating those works, there's a few ideas for more works and more series of works, kind of in that direction, and following that path, seeing what else can be combined in terms of the media I work with. I'm not sure where or when those will be seen, but that's sort of where my creativity is pulling me at the moment.
Cool. Awesome. Well, this was fun. I always like chatting with you. So thanks for joining us. And thanks to everyone who's watching it right now. And we'll be posting the links down below. Come out to the gallery. I think your show goes until May 17th, I believe. And then We'll be keeping it online for a few months after that. So you can always check stuff there at homerwatson.on.ca. And yeah, I think that's pretty much wraps up this conversation with Trevor Waurechen. Thanks.